Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
So, from the audience perspective, how can small towns and rural businesses finally get the kind of reliable high speed internet that levels the playing field with major cities? And what does that mean for Canada's future economy? Well, that's exactly what our guest will be talking about how he and his team are breaking through barriers of geography and infrastructure to bring real connectivity where it's needed most. He'll share what it takes to modernize rural networks, the unexpected lessons learned from leading innovation outside the city, and how better access can transform communities, businesses, and opportunities across Canada. Our guest today is Birket Foster from Storm Internet. He is a pioneering Canadian entrepreneur who's been bridging technology gaps since the late 70s, from launching mbfoster.com out of Carleton University and building it into a global software powerhouse, selling across 48 US states and 38 countries, to forging partnerships with industry giants like Hewlett Packard. His work has consistently connected systems, people, and opportunities. When the limited rural internet threatened innovation, he didn't wait for a solution, he built one. As the driving force behind Storm Internet, Birket led its privatization in 2003 and full acquisition in 2020, entering into a new era of modernized, community driven connectivity. When he's not leading teams or advising on tech strategy, you'll find him casting for Muskie or exploring distant worlds through science fiction. He's also a returning guest from season 3, episode 138, Why Canadian Entrepreneurs Truly Hold the Key to Economic Growth. Birgit, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you back. And you know what? Do you have a favorite quote or saying you want to share with us?
Sure. If you're going to get something done, you sometimes have to do it yourself. And so the Storm team actually goes with we're big enough to deliver and small enough to care.
I like that. That's really important. The caring part, but yet still have weight to deliver the services. So, what does innovation look like when you're working with legacy systems and next gen at the same time? Because I remember in my past career, someone was telling me, "Yep, that bank machine right there is running on Windows 95 or something of that ilk, and we were already into XP. Little bit of latency there. How do you manage to get around stuff that you're like, that's old. That's unfortunate."
Well, there's a couple of different aspects to this. First of all, technology will always change. So you have to end up figuring out what the right technology at the right time is and what its lifespan will be for your solutions for your customers. It's really all about solving a problem for customers, and then what you're doing is marrying technologies to make the solution possible for your customers. And so that's a large part of what you have to do. And in the case of Storm, because we have 262 towers and many wireless customers, thousands of wireless customers, plus we have a stack that includes reselling DSL cable and fibers, plus our own 50 kilometers of fiber up in the Clayton area, buried fiber there. What we have to do is we have to take a look at all the pieces, and you can't change them all at once. So part of this is to make sure that you understand how an integrated solution will deliver for the various different constituents that you have across the geographic area, which is about 8,000 square kilometers, which is a big area to hit. But that's why we have 262 towers.
It's a fair number.
So, as a man that has to prognosticate, how do you know when a shift is more than a trend? How do you know when to book bank on something?
Well, the largest thing is that you don't just jump. You actually go, we have a lab. We put the technology in the lab and check it out and make sure that we understand how it works. Once we understand how it works, we then will put it on the roof of the Storm building and feed it to one of our local towers and check how it works in the real world, not just in the lab. And then we will look for some customers that could use this technology. What you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what does it take to deploy the technology. There's a 360 you look at around the technology. You're looking to find out what does it take to install it? What does it take to actually manage it once it's there? How do I update it in the field? Because I'm not sending somebody to climb a 200-foot tower every time I need to change the microcode. So how do I monitor it to know how it's performing? And what are the limits for this? There's also the financial side. What does it actually take to invest in this technology to be able to deliver to the customers? Because that's part of the whole deal is you have to make a profit so you can invest and do more.
Infrastructure, that has a lot of capital money laid into that. And are you building like, let's say towers, for example, or locations like high points, green builds, or are you leveraging existing platforms that are out there and you're just piggybacking on structures? Let's say if it's a cell tower space, is that an opportunity that you find happening, or or do you find other routes? Like, because you did also an in-ground cable, which is, that's no mean feat. It's
Yeah, that was actually done because the vertical asset we wanted to use was actually the poles along the side of the road, but it was made uneconomic for us. So we chose to actually drill and dig to put the technology in. In terms of the towers, we have a lot of our own where we just say, "Hey, Wayne, would you put a tower up in your back 40 and help serve your neighborhood? We'll throw in internet for you for a while." And most of the time, people like the idea that they're helping their neighbors out. But the other thing is, in some locations, the high point is already owned by a company like American Tower or SBA or even Rogers and Bell. And while it's not easy to get on those towers, it's necessary sometimes in order to be present in a particular area, especially since high points are worth knowing about. Towers are not cheap, and so it's really important for people to understand that when you put a sector on a tower, it picks up on the signals from a segment of the population. Now, typically those sectors are 90-degree sectors. We're working with a new technology that has 120-degree sectors. So if I need to do a 360 around a tower, I only need 3 instead of 4 sectors on the tower. So that makes a difference. Worth knowing that the infrastructure is going to have to be there for a while. So before you decide to pull the trigger, you've got to know what your current marketplace is in that area and what is expected to evolve around there. Are they building new subdivisions? Is everybody leaving that area? Both of those would be other ends of the spectrum for whether or not you want to make the investment in. So you're making an investment to serve people, and it's really important that you understand how long they need to be served, what kind of solution do they actually need? Because it turns out that if all you want is Netflix, you're probably able to get away with 5.1 or 3.1. So that's 5 megs down, megabits per second down, and 3 megabits per second down. So because the people from Netflix have actually optimized all of this. So it's but if you're doing video conferencing like we are today, you need to make sure that what you're connected to will actually have enough oomph on the up. And as people move to the cloud, none of the cloud applications work unless they have an up that's decent. So video conferencing kind of pushed the envelope so that you could no longer be a 10.1 or a 20.1. You had to actually be a 25 or a 5010 or one of those different numbers that allow you to have some up. And depending on how many people in the building are going to need to be doing simultaneous video conferencing, you may need, 100. Who knows?
Are you considered an essential service once you're established and you're up and running? Are you identified that way?
During the pandemic, that certainly happened. We were actually definitely considered to be a key service. There were a number of different things that happened during the pandemic because people needed to work from home and learn from home. So the infrastructure that we built, over 200 points of presence, got upped in order to be able to serve the customers better. So that's one of those things. And this infrastructure needs to solve that problem, whatever the problem was. It wasn't a problem before because you only watched Netflix on a Friday night. And then all of a sudden you're actually doing real work and working from home, and that made a big difference. In fact, with the new round of technology that we're rolling out, I called one of our customers who's on a technology that the government has chosen to claw back. So we have a licensed frequency, but they're clawing it back at this point. And I called up one of our current customers and said, here's what we're going to offer. We're going to offer you 300 down and 50 up. And he said, "Oh boy, I wouldn't have to go into the office in order to be able to join a video conference anymore." Because a lot of places they have people across the country that join a video conference. Well, if you're supposed to have your camera on or be able to show some slides or share your screen on something, you need the up. And so that's been a huge thing. So I mean, I actually know somebody who, when we were putting in the Clayton fiber, she told me that she used to go and rent a hotel room in Carleton Place in order to be able to participate in those calls. And she didn't want to drive into town, but driving to Carleton Place, which was pretty close, was the way she solved her problem, and renting a hotel or motel room for a couple of hours in order to do the video conference.
Birkin, I've got a feet in the street question. Over
Sure.
30 years ago, Bill Joy from Sun Microsystems said that the hard drive was dead. We're all going to be using thin computing. Maybe he believed you only deserved a computer if you were in the city. But why didn't that happen?
Because people want control of their assets and their content. That's number one. Number two is, I mean, even the Chromebooks have come back to try and take advantage of that. You're getting the technology in place that allow you to be able to have a lot of things. And when he was talking about thin computing, it was deployed differently at that point in time. Now we have a thing called the cloud, which is really just somebody else's computer down on the other end of an internet. So it's really one of those things where the technology has evolved. The trouble with it, of course, is when we do have an outage, you really feel it. So, what happens if you have 50 people in a building and you're running a cloud-based application and all of a sudden the shuts down? Well, you got 50 people that you might have to decide to go home for the day. That's an issue. The question I have for people is, are you looking at the robustness of your network? Are you looking at the possibility of having a failover, having something that when if the primary goes down, there's a secondary? The good news about wireless internet, which of course Storm has a lot of customers on fibers, but they also have a lot on internet that is wireless. And the advantage of this is a backhoe cannot take out your wireless link.
It does if it hits the tower, but you're true, true. He's working it hard then.
Okay. So the big pieces that people don't get yet is that now we are delivering wireless internet at fiber speeds. You do not need to have fiber to get the delivery. And the good news for people is that delivery, high-speed delivery wirelessly, is less expensive to deliver than putting a fiber either in the ground or hanging it on poles, which is a whole other topic. So so what's happening is we're actually able to deliver fiber speeds wirelessly, and that means that your failover could be wireless quite easily, and that would get you where you need to get to. Uh, so that's one big piece. Now, the other part is if you ask any real estate agent, they will tell you that the very first question people ask is, "Can I get good internet there?" Whenever you're actually looking at a business or even a resident or a potential resident for an area, the question they're asking is, "What's my internet there?" And that's really very important for the economic development of an area, or even for an area to continue to stay in the game. Because if it's not in the game, it means that it would be because it doesn't have enough internet to make it worthwhile. It's the same as any of the other five utilities. So if you look at it, the number one utility is the sixth utility that arrived. So we had hydro, we had telephone, we have natural gas, and you have water and sewer, and then your last one is internet. But the internet turns out to be the decision maker. Whether or not we go there depends on whether or not we have internet there. So Storm Internet is delivering in the countryside as well as in the city, but our marquee product is wireless in the countryside, and we take an address and we figure out how we can connect it. So if it's in the urban areas of the countryside, perhaps there's already infrastructure there to deliver fiber or cable, and so we'll deliver those. We just look at the address and figure out what's the best way to deliver the internet that somebody actually needs, as opposed to internet that you don't need. Because I hear ads every now and then about 3 gigs, so that's 3 gigabytes per second. Nobody working from home needs that. Period. Full stop. Except the video editor, but the rest of the folks don't need that. So it's kind of like telling somebody they need a 1,200 horsepower for their daily commuter.
Bernie wants one. Bernie would use that.
Yeah, that's probably my German heavy lead foot coming into kicking in, but no, I don't need that. I know better.
Yeah, well, One has to realize that they can be fun to drive, but they're not really good for a daily commuter. Anyway,
No.
the big thing about this is to actually understand the speeds you need, and it's always about up and down and what problem are you solving, what applications you're going to run. Are you moving a lot of data when you do things? What's the time look like? So we did banks printing up in the Clayton area, and they all of a sudden could send you the graphic that they were proposing. They would stick on a bunch of posters for you. And they could do it in 2 seconds instead of 5 minutes. So that makes a big difference to businesses that use heavy data when they're moving things around.
When now this is on Zoom, so Zoom is the world. When I hear Clayton area, I think of northern New York. Where's Clayton in your world?
It's over by Arnprior. So, if Almont, really, actually closer to Almont. So Almont, Arnprior area, you're going to, yeah, that's the Clayton area. And very nice area, got a bunch of cottages, got a bunch of year-round houses. Not a lot of industry, but we chose to put fiber in, so we did an experiment in a place where we don't expect to get overbuilt by Bell or Rogers, because 'cause they'll never make a dime, especially since all the customers out there really love us, so.
Time for the listener's MBA class. Wi-Fi is free. We all hear that. There's 2.4 and you can use 4 point whatever. But licensed frequencies, I think of that as television. Tell me what licensed frequencies has in telecommunications.
Well, every frequency is a public good. And the people from ISED, which is Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, formerly Industry Canada, they actually control that on behalf of Canadians. And they allow you to license certain frequencies to be able to do things. Now, some of them are licensed, so the public safety frequencies are licensed. Public safety has a certain band in which they'll work off the fire truck or the ambulance and things like that, and police. So those kinds of things happen. But a licensed frequency is merely a frequency that is made available by having a license. Now, interestingly enough, the newest technology we have combines channels together and allows us to do it non-licensed. Even though so the big high speed stuff that we're working on is delivering despite the fact that uh, there's no licensed frequency in that pic. So while licensed frequencies are important because people um, can't overrun you. So we do some things called license links where we can push 2 gigs between two point to point, and we own it from this end to that end, and that makes it easy for us to know that we're the only people operating in that frequency in that specific geography. And ISED takes care of making sure that that is put together properly. So
What's the economic impact before and after? So an area, if they have Wi-Fi, it's might be cellular, and if that, then all of a sudden, boom, you've rolled in and the area is lit up like a Christmas tree. What's been the impact of the Clayton area or other areas?
the real answer is you're able to run applications at higher speeds. You're able to move more data in a second. And it's not only for edutainment, the education and entertainment side of the world, but it's also for business. And everybody at some point is going to be an employee and have to connect to something. And this gives them the option to be able to work from where they are rather than having to travel to a place of work. And of course, while that's a debate on whether return to the office is necessary, what we're also seeing is we're actually enabling people to be able to run businesses in the countryside. So for instance, there's a group that does alpacas, and they're able to sell over the internet, and they get orders from around the world, which they wouldn't get if they weren't able to connect to the internet properly. It changes the nature of, is business local or is business local and global? And so if you want to go global, you're going to have to do that. The second thing on this is on the social side. Every government agency has realized that there's an economic benefit to working across the internet to provide services. And if you don't have fast enough internet, you can't get to fill in that form, or you can't watch the YouTube on how to fill in your taxes. And if the government wants to have the low cost infrastructure to deliver these services, they absolutely need to make sure that internet happens everywhere. The digital divide is real. In the countryside, people don't get the same services as they can in the city because the internet's not there. And let's make a distinction between internet and cellular and Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is inside your building, inside your restaurant, whereas connecting the building is different because once it's connected, now I can put access points across in the back room so people can use the barcoding and check out the inventory despite the metal shelves in the back room. So it changes when people actually understand that Wi-Fi is the connection of the building is done. And then the other thing is cellular. While you can do internet, and many people do over their cell phones, one of the huge issues with that is that the internet on a cell phone is not the same as the internet connecting a building. In fact, if you look at it and you have more than one person, how are you just hotspotting on the phone? What happens if Wayne decides to go to the grocery store? He's going to take his phone with him. Now Bernie can't actually work because Wayne took away the hotspot. So people have to realize that while it's a convenience for a party of one, it's not a convenience for a party of 50. And so there's the connecting the building, there's connecting individuals, and there's also doing Wi-Fi throughout the building to deliver the signal, the Wi-Fi so that people can connect to the internet from within the building. And wired is probably, in many cases, the right thing to do.
As a professor and as an employer, you're called to be a leader, but you also, to stay fresh, have to be a learner. What are your routines to make sure you're up to date with what you're saying?
Well, there's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle. One of them is that there are many conferences, and you get a chance to go and see those conferences and understand what's going on in terms of new groundbreaking technologies. And just because there's a groundbreaking technology doesn't mean that it's appropriate for what you're trying to do. So some stuff is just cool, but not necessarily commercially viable. So you have to take a look at that. And you basically take apart a technology and look at it from what would it take to market it, what would it take to sell it, what would it take to install it, what would it take to support it, what would it take to update it in the field, what's the life cycle on this, and most importantly, what problem is it solving for our customers or potential customers? What do they look like? What's the niche? If I had to draw an avatar, what would that avatar have for characteristics? So it is classic, let's go solve a problem, but you actually have to understand the pieces behind that.
Are you finding that your relationship with government is strong and you're getting the support you need, or are they in the forefront, or are they catching up, or is it you're just running side by side to deliver the services? I'm thinking like if from an infrastructure perspective, if an area has a depressed economic outlook, and this would help alleviate that. You find that you have a lot of proactive elements to it, and that could be federal, provincial, or municipal, right?
At the end, they should do a lot more for the municipals, and that's just an opinion from a guy. The municipal is where everything delivers. Provincial programs and federal programs aside, you are trying to work within a municipality somehow, and the municipality has control on when you can build a tower, where you can dig. So there's a thing called an MAA, which is a municipal access agreement, which says in the right of way along the side of the road, which you guys probably know is about 6 foot off the side of the road, who can put stuff in there and how is it managed? Those kinds of things are part of the picture. So the municipal is the one that we have to work with the most. The good news is that we've been proactive at Storm and have had meetings with ISED and the CRTC, as well as at the municipal level. So I often go in and do a council meeting to say, here's what we've done for you lately, because they don't really know that Storm exists. They know Bell does, they know Rogers does, but there's 200 smaller ISPs across Canada that complete the picture because Bell and Rogers own probably about 84%. The other 16% split between 200 of us. And it's really important if you don't want the small guys to disappear because they are the ones actually doing it in smaller places. You need to absolutely make sure that they can survive and that things are there. And I make that point routinely the to the federal government for sure. Haven't had a lot with the provincial, a little bit here and there. We're working on a couple of files with the province, but municipal is where the action really is, and part of it is to understand what's happening in that area so that we might be able to build infrastructure to be able to help the economic development, whether it's new projects for subdivisions or whether it's an industrial park.
But I want to put you at risk a bit. People don't realize that quotes are about a time and a place. Like you only need 5 computers in the world. Why does my refrigerator need an internet connection? I can't imagine that. That strikes me as the ultimate of silly.
So we're going through an era where everybody wants everything to be connected, and they think that it will help, and it might. In fact, I turned down the Wi-Fi option for my dishwasher when I went to buy a new dishwasher. It turns out that they had a legitimate, potentially, reason for doing it, which was that they could do predictive support for you. So they could predict that there was an issue with your dishwasher and they needed to send a repair guy over to help you out. The real reason was because if you bought your dishwasher soap through them, they made a percentage off doing that. You know, those of you who go to Costco and buy the 140 tabs and it's done, don't ever need to have the dishwasher decide that it needs to order again. But they know how many times it ran. They're picking up data. I mean, and the real world is all about the data. And what's that worth? So there's going to be data for everything, and the question is, who should have access to it? Would it help you understanding what your budget needs to be? Would it give you some data that would be useful to you, rather than just the dishwasher deciding to count the number of times you run it and what settings you run it on? And is there anything that seems to be doing something else? And that's going to apply across the board. I'm not sure about your refrigerator, but the idea was that you could combine the refrigerator with your shopping list, and then it could automate the process of putting a shopping list on your phone when you get to go to the store, or perhaps pre-ordering it for you. So the store would actually ship it to you, and then you wouldn't even have to go out anymore. So who knows if you I mean, some people love shopping and getting out there and checking the bananas and trying to find new items that might show up in the shelf. If you only know what you know, you're not necessarily going to pick a new object because you don't know about it yet, right? So I think people need to think about that too. But it is about data, in the end.
Birgit, you've been at this for a while, and some things have been challenging and maybe some things have been boring. Well, what has challenged you the most in your journey?
Well, the largest challenge is making sure that you anticipate what's going to be needed as things roll out. So, for instance, we're working on this project right now. We're 55 customers in on the project, and what we're doing is we're delivering either 300 down and 50 up, or 100 down and 30 up speeds, and those are very high speeds. Gamers will be happy, and multiple people in your family would be able to use it. There's not a lot of businesses involved. We've done a couple of businesses using this new technology, but it's just the demographics of that area are that people work from home, and there's not really any factories. There's a few stores, but it's not. It's more of a residential area than a industrial area. Think that what happens is when we bring this kind of technology to the rural area, it becomes possible for a small business to grow up and become a manufacturer. If you look at it in Canada, the stats show that most of the jobs in Canada are created by the small and medium businesses. In fact, you've got 63% represented by the under 100. And if you think about it, all the small stores and things like that, definitely under 100. And then the 101 to 499 is about 21%, leaving you with only 16% in the 500 plus club. So the businesses where they employ 500 and more people are only really 16% of all of the jobs in Canada provided by them. So more policies need to be put in place to allow small and medium businesses to thrive and grow, because you really do want them to grow to the 500 plus club if possible. And as we look at exporting, it's going to be really interesting to see how Canada can diversify its exports to meet many other countries rather than just shipping straight to the States for a lot of.
When you're assembling a project, I almost liken this to building an overpass, over a major highway, or even putting a highway infrastructure in. I've remember talking to an accountant. He says, "Yep, when they amortize the bridge out, it's a 50-year outlook, but there's an impact." Are you finding that people are knocking on your door saying, "Listen, we want to grow," or are you finding that high build it and they will come scenario? Which is it? Is it a mix, or is it the government, a government agency, municipal or regional or countywide, that is going, "Hey, if we have this, we know something more is going to happen. We see we're getting uh, other feedback from our space that there are opportunities. We just can't maximize them." How do you get the buy-in for big projects?
Well, occasionally we do get a subsidy. So that does help because it means that we can do a project that would have had a longer return on investment. However, the municipalities are only just starting to realize how important internet is to the location of people and jobs. And at the end of the day, you need jobs because people need to be able to eat. So it's important that we think about this as part of the planning. It's not a default that you're going to have stuff in an area that provides high speed internet, and in fact, um, many of the municipalities don't even really look at the effect of the small companies, and they really need the small companies because we're the ones that took the risk to decide that we would go and do things down that rural road. Because um, basically, the larger players don't really want to deliver unless there's 5,000 people in a chunk. There's a lot of places that don't have 5,000 people.
But is it a number of end users, or is it the economic impact? If I kind of back it up, if I have 5,000 residential, I get that. But if I have maybe 50 industrial, right, and manufacturing, or even a farm, a large farm, it generates revenue, it generates traffic, right? And
Yeah.
so yes.
It generates sales tax dollars. There's a lot of different things. So actually, we're 150 plus smart farms in, and actually, we're getting to our first smart farms that are going to use this new technology to be able to connect themselves. We're talking with about 10 up in the Almond area right now, and I totally expect that having the higher speed infrastructure will help them with their integration into the internet world of their farm, depending on what kind farm business they are. We could be just doing herd management. We could be managing the grain silos to make sure that they bring the moisture content down to a certain thing, or it could be dairy where nobody wants to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and feed the cows anymore. So we automate the feeding process and the milking process. And that's all done by integrating in the feeder, the milker. We probably throw cameras into the corner where the birthing pen is. We probably add Wi-Fi in the shop so that people can watch YouTubes while they're figuring out how to fix the tractor. Those kinds of things are real on a farm. People actually need to get that kind of thing. I think you're gonna end up with a need for people to do many things that are going to be connected. So, like with the internet connecting at a dairy farm, they automatically know when it's time for the local milk pickup guy to come by and dump the tank. They know they can reorder feed from the so at least it's there and the farmer can go and pick it up, or maybe it gets delivered. If you look at the workflows in a business, you can figure out where the advantage might be of having data that goes to a partner, which, normally Fred would call up and say, "Hey, Bill, I'm going to need 4 tons of this next week." Now it could and if it's put together properly, that whole process can be automated, taking some of the cost and thinking out because um, it will be done automatically.
You ever
Yeah.
advertise that? Like, when I drive past farmers' fields, right, and you'll see that the farmer has bought a certain type of seed, could be corn,
Yeah.
whatever. You'll see a little sign on the fence post, almost every second or third post for a while. You know, that brand of corn, and it's kind of a promo. Do you do that level of marketing in the field where this is powered by Storm Internet?
We actually we started with signs about cameras because you have to warn people that you're putting cameras in so that they behave properly. So that's one of the things that we've had for a while, which says there are cameras present, brought to you by storm or something like that. So we do have those signs. And lately, with this new project, we've been putting those signs at the houses that we've been installing that say somebody here just got 300 internet. And what's happening is people are calling up and saying, "I want one too." So we're seeing that happen, which is good. I'm due to go and speak at Mississippi Mills Council in the next couple of weeks in order to update the council on what we're exactly doing. Part of it is because we know that there's going to be areas that don't have good internet right now, that the councilors hear from their constituents, "Gee, can I get internet, please?" And the answer is yes, but we have to know that you have a problem there. And we have to also we have to know that we can actually make a return on it. What kind of internet do they need? How much of it? What is it, a business? Is it a residence? All of those kinds of things need to go into it to understand what is it we could actually deliver on this. And a large part of what we've been doing in the rural area as well is we had a project called Resilience. We were looking at adding in UPSs and generators. We've got quite a few of them already, but we actually did a study to figure out where else we could do things. Well, a lot of times when the power goes out, we've got 20 hours of power to run our internet. The internet, a lot of places, it's 120 watts, which is like a light bulb. So, we have 120 watts on the tower, so I can power that with a couple of batteries, and it'll last for a long time. But you have to think about it. So you put those pieces in the infrastructure so that it can actually survive the things. Most of the outages that we suffer are because we had a power outage where perhaps it was a tree branch fell on a hydro line and took it out. And surprisingly enough, inside the city of Ottawa, which is 80% rural, as we know, inside the city of Ottawa, they have 300 accidents with poles. It could be that an automobile rammed into a pole and knocked it over, or it could be that a snowplow clipped one. But there's 300 incidents on an average year. So that's one, maybe not so much with the new automatic cars, but we'll see. But right for now, that's a factor. It's nothing we can do about the fact that somebody lost control of their car. Don't text and drive. See if you can't figure out how to make sure that people could be resilient enough to survive it when you have an outage like that.
In the polls, I think they're jumping out at us.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. So, even in North Dundas, the folks in North Dundas have been using the internet to monitor temperature, moisture, and so on, so they know when to send the snowplows out or when to go sand stuff or salt it so that you don't get an ice buildup on certain roads. So they actually are using that. That's part of their defense against somebody who's slips into the ditch because they're going too fast and slid. And they're using that as a defense to prove that they did send out the sanding truck. That's interesting, even in small municipalities.
So, Birket, I live on a Bass Lake, and I understand you're more of a muskie man. So, if AI could help muskies talk, what would they be telling entrepreneurs chasing their next catch?
Well, first of all, bass are nice musky bites. And the muskie snack. So that's the thing you gotta know is that They literally take the bait balls and eat them. Right about now, they're getting ready to hibernate for the winter. So that's just something you might want to think about. And we actually see bait balls on the fish finder when we go looking in the fall. And muskie season's up till about mid-December, just in case you're interested. So yeah, if we're actually, don't forget muskies are catch, photo, release. So just because we're chasing one doesn't mean we're going to catch it. That's why we call it fishing, not catching. So that's another piece of the puzzle people want to think about. So an entrepreneur needs to understand, is that just bait or is that something I can actually eat? So that's what people need to know. Just because it's a shiny object doesn't mean you should chase it. You need to actually figure out how that could impact things. What is it that you as an entrepreneur are thinking about? Is it just a snack for today, or is it uh, if I actually go and work with it, we could have some fun and have snacks for the rest of the year. So, those are the kinds of things people need to think about for as an entrepreneur. It really is. I mean, the apex predator in the Ottawa River is the muskie. It's smaller than a sturgeon, but it's still the apex predator, so you have to actually think about it and say, what does the muskie get by being the apex predator? Well, it gets the right to do whatever it wants. Yeah.
Birket, you're in Eastern Ontario. You also have a perfect client. Who could this perfect client be? Where would he be? And how would he get a hold of you?
Well, the perfect client would be somebody who needs internet and would like great support. That would be our perfect client. So that's right off the bat the kind of things that we would look for. The thing about clients is everybody has a unique problem they're trying to solve. So a perfect client will be one that can articulate, what problem am I trying to solve and what does it look like 3 years from now, so that we can actually aim at providing a long-term solution to make sure they get what they want. And that's really a large part of what Storm does. It tries to put an infrastructure into an area that will provide internet for a group of people. We have fabulous team members that know how to design networks, that know how to install equipment, that know how to support equipment and diagnose things when something goes bump in the night. We have folks that know how the backhaul works, how 151 Front Street in Toronto plays, because that's where the internet in Ontario goes to meet the world. And so we have all those pieces that need. It's not just one thing. You have your customer support people, and I can't say enough about our customer support people. They are fabulous. They really do care, and they will take care of you. And they know where Carleton Place is. They know where Chesterville is. It's not somebody from overseas. It's people who actually live and work in the community. So that's important.
But geographic reach. Who isn't a client? Do you want someone in Cincinnati?
We have a couple of larger customers who want us to give them a private network. And because we have partners that we can acquire internet from, we can build a network that goes in more than one place. So, for instance, we have a customer in Ottawa who also has a plant in Winnipeg, and we've done a private network between the two. There's no reason why we couldn't do something into the US or even into Europe if somebody wanted a private network. It's really about being able to deliver not only the internet, but also the required support and uptime that's required for the particular application that's going to be there. And it's not just the internet. It's about how does it all integrate. We have a tire group where they're buying up smaller customers and they want to put a common infrastructure in every place. And we've got a parts place where they've got 24 parts stores, and they're now all local to each other so that they can actually go look up and see if the Cornwall group has particular part number in stock. All those kinds of things. It's changing the way people can do business because they have the data available across multiple locations. So that's the kind of thing that people can actually take advantage of. So people have to define the problem broadly enough and have it over a number of years to have the plan for over a number of years to understand how we could do that.
And they best reach you how?
Yeah. Well, yeah. They best reach us via the internet.
Not helpful. Not helpful.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah, give a
Storm.
website to work with.
Yeah, we work with storm.ca. It's a Canadian website because we're a Canadian company. We definitely have a lot of customers in the rural areas, and they do meet us at certain events. We do have our phone number is 613-585, and that will allow them to get hold of us. If you look at our website, you'll see that we have residential as well as commercial, and we're happy to help things happen. You tell us
I
what
don't
you
know.
want, we'll try and deliver.
I actually like that because it's not just necessarily the internet. There might be something more, a couple next layers into that.
Oh, yeah,
Which
we're already starting our team is looking at right now, what else could we deliver? So, for instance, we've been doing cameras and access points, otherwise known as Wi-Fi, for years. We got our first set of questions about could we provide doorbell cameras? Could we provide some of the other internet connected things for a smart home? So part of what we're gonna look at is, what is a smart home? What does that define in as? How could we help? Defining, and it could be urban or rural, it doesn't really matter. A smart home is gonna be a smart home, and there's gonna be new functions that could happen.
I want to say thank you to Birket Foster, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Listen, if at the end of the day you're going, I'm living out in the countryside or in an area that doesn't necessarily have a local ISP, internet service provider, right up to the doorstep, reach out to Birket. And if you're not in the Ottawa Valley, still reach out to Birket and his team because they can help you in your location. They might have a solution that's perfectly well vetted.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.
True, sir.